campfire burning in the dark, somewhere in the American West, and a voice rising out of that darkness that stops everything around it. Not loud, not performed, not the kind of singing that announces itself as singing, just real. The kind of voice that makes people put down whatever they are holding and just listen without knowing why. That voice belongs to a man sitting beside that fire with a guitar across his knee and a face that carries something most performers spend their entire careers desperately trying to manufacture. Authenticity. You cannot buy it. You cannot rehearse it. You either have it or you spend your whole career pretending you do.
I'm not looking for trouble with you, Marshal. This Jerry here's got me all riled up, him and that girl.
I don't know. But I'll tell you something, Doc. You better not mess around with nades there.
Ken Curtis had it from the first note he ever sang in public. And Hollywood saw it. And Hollywood took it. And what Hollywood did with it after that is the story that the anniversary specials and the legacy documentaries and the carefully approved retrospectives have been quietly managing around for decades.
Well, my folks was poor folks and I didn't get no name.
Well, what do they call you?
They called me Festus.
Festus?
Yeah. This old heifer and I just swang him out sideways and he said, "Open yourself up, Waters." Gee, Jones, don't you see?
Watch his face. Right there. That easy grin. Those eyes that seem genuinely amused by the world around them. The way he sits in a saddle like a man who was born on a horse and never quite came all the way off. That image. That specific image of Ken Curtis on horseback against a wide-open American sky is one of the most carefully constructed pieces of television mythology ever produced. Not because it was fake, because it was real enough to make you stop asking what was underneath it.
I told you to get rid of that hooch now, and I mean it. You ain't gonna go out there with your...
They'll see the tracks going in, but they ain't gonna see them going out.
And underneath it was a man who had grown up above a jail cell in Lamar, Colorado, watching his mother pass food through iron bars to prisoners. A man who had followed Frank Sinatra's footsteps into Tommy Dorsey's band and somehow made audiences forget they were making a comparison. A man who had married into one of Hollywood's most powerful families and walked away from that marriage 11 years later with nothing but his dignity and a lesson about what it costs to build your career inside someone else's empire. A man who played loyal for 11 years on the most watched television western in American history, and who spent those same 11 years watching things happen around him that loyal people are not supposed to talk about. Picture him one more time. Campfire, guitar, voice carrying out into the dark. Ghost riders in the sky. If you know that song, you know what it feels like when a voice is not performing a lyric but living inside it. Ken Curtis did not sing that song. He inhabited it. Every time. Like a man who understood personally what it felt like to chase something across a sky that kept moving just ahead of where you could reach. Now picture him on that horse again. Riding easy. Hat pulled low. That grin sitting on his face like it was born there. Festus Hagen. America's favorite deputy. America's most beloved sidekick. The character that 11 years of 300-plus episodes built into something that outlasted the show itself and settled permanently into the emotional memory of an entire generation of American television viewers. The man behind that character, the real man, is the one this video is about. Not the grin, not the voice, not the horse or the campfire or any of the images that the Gunsmoke machine built and polished and presented to 30 million people every single week. The man who smiled through all of that while carrying 5 specific grievances about 5 specific people that he never got to say fully on the record. And by the time this video is over, you are going to understand not just who those 5 people were, but why the machine that built Ken Curtis worked so hard to make sure his version of events never became the version that history remembered. Start where the official story never starts. Not on a soundstage. Not in a studio executive's office. Not in any of the temperature-controlled environments where careers get manufactured and images get professionally maintained. A jailhouse. Lamar, Colorado. 1916. Curtis Wayne Gates is born into a home that most people would not recognize as a home at all. His father, Dan Gates, is the sheriff of Bent County. Part of the job is living in a small apartment directly above the county jail. His mother, Nellie, does not just cook for her family. She cooks for the prisoners too. Young Ken watches her pass plates of food through iron bars before he is old enough to understand what iron bars are for. Other children play on front lawns. Ken's playground has cell doors. His earliest memories are the sound of those doors closing. The sound of containment. The sound of a system that decides what people can and cannot do and enforces that decision with locks. That detail matters more than it might appear to, because decades later Ken Curtis would find himself inside a different kind of system, with different kinds of locks. On a television set in Hollywood where the bars are made of contracts and controlled narratives and the carefully managed power dynamics of one of the most successful shows in broadcast history. And he would recognize exactly what he was looking at, because he had seen it before, through iron bars, in Lamar, Colorado, before he was old enough to understand what any of it meant. He did not arrive in Hollywood through the front door. He arrived through music, and not quietly. Tommy Dorsey's band in the early 1940s, one of the most popular orchestras in America. A vocalist slot that opened up not long after a young singer from Hoboken, New Jersey named Frank Sinatra departed for bigger things. Not an easy act to follow. Ken followed it anyway, did not try to be Sinatra, did not imitate the style or chase the comparison, just stood at that microphone and sang the way he had always sung, from somewhere real. From somewhere that the audiences in those ballrooms could feel without being able to explain exactly why they felt it. He won them, every room, every night. Tommy Dorsey told him to change his name. Curtis Wayne Gates was not a name that moved merchandise or looked right on a marquee. So Curtis Wayne Gates became Ken Curtis. Cleaner, stronger, built for the industry that was already deciding who he was going to be before he had fully figured it out himself. That name change is the first moment where the distance between the real man and the product begins. It will not be the last. He becomes the lead singer of the Sons of the Pioneers. Ghost Riders in the Sky. Room Full of Roses. Songs that became stitched into the emotional fabric of the American West so completely that most people who know them have no idea who sang them first. Ken Curtis did. And then John Ford noticed. And when John Ford noticed you in 1940s Hollywood, your life changed in ways you did not always get to choose. John Ford was not just a director. He was a power center, a gravitational force that pulled careers into his orbit and decided their trajectory from that point forward. Ken Curtis entered that orbit, started appearing in Ford films, standing alongside John Wayne, sharing frames with the biggest names in the most popular genre in American cinema. He was not a small part of those films. He was a genuine presence, memorable, specific, the kind of actor who makes you notice him even when someone as commanding as John Wayne is standing 3 feet away. And then he married into the Ford family entirely. Barbara Ford, the director's daughter. On paper, it looked like the ultimate Hollywood consolidation. The talented singer-turned-actor now permanently connected to one of the industry's most powerful men through family, rather than just professional relationship. In reality, it was the beginning of something more complicated than consolidation. Barbara had grown up under a father who was notoriously demanding, controlling, and used to absolute authority over everything in his professional world and a significant amount of his personal one. Ken was a man who had grown up above a jail cell learning what systems of control looked like from the inside. Two people shaped by powerful and difficult authority figures, building a life together inside an industry that ran entirely on power dynamics. The marriage lasted 12 years. It ended in 1964, quietly, without public drama. The way Ken Curtis handled most things that hurt him, with silence. And in 1964, the same year that marriage ended, Festus Hagen appeared on Gunsmoke for the first time, meant to be a one-episode character. And that is where the Real story begins. The one that 5 names and 11 years and 300 episodes and 1 salary dispute and 1 reunion movie that Ken Curtis was not in. Tell you. If you know how to read what the official version left out, stay with us, because what comes next is the part that nobody in the Gunsmoke machine ever wanted said out loud. Everyone loved Festus. The scratchy voice, the beat-up hat, the grin that made 30 million Americans feel like they personally knew the man wearing it. Ken Curtis played that character for 11 years, over 300 episodes, never phoned in a single one. And the entire time he was smiling for those cameras. He was carrying 5 names. 5 people. 5 relationships. 5 wounds that the Gunsmoke machine spent decades making sure never became part of the official story. He did not start in television. He started above a jailhouse in Lamar, Colorado, where his father was sheriff and his mother cooked meals for prisoners and passed them through iron bars. That boy grew up understanding what it looked like when a system decided your value and enforced it with locks. He just did not know yet that Hollywood built its locks out of contracts and controlled narratives instead of iron. He sang his way in. Tommy Dorsey's band. The slot Frank Sinatra left behind. The Sons of the Pioneers. Ghost Riders in the Sky sung with a voice that did not perform authenticity but simply had it. John Ford noticed. John Wayne noticed. CBS noticed. And then Festus happened. One episode that was supposed to disappear. 30 million letters that said otherwise. James Arness was the star and everyone on that set knew it. When Festus started pulling audience numbers that made the network take notice, the Shadow Arness cast got noticeably heavier. Milburn Stone had been there from episode 1 and treated his seniority like territory. 2 strong men. 1 set. Real friction that produced some of the most electric scenes in the show's history precisely because neither of them was fully acting. John Mantely was the producer who told Ken Curtis what 11 years of Festus was worth. The number was an insult dressed up as an offer. Amanda Blake built Miss Kitty into something audiences genuinely loved and felt every percentage point of attention that shifted toward Festus as a direct competitive pressure she had not signed up to absorb. And Dennis Weaver never even had to be in the room. His ghost was there anyway. Every early review of Festus mentioned Chester Good. Every interview contained some version of the same question. Ken answered it graciously every single time while privately carrying the specific exhaustion of spending 11 years proving that a comparison was wrong. In 1987, CBS called Gunsmoke Returned to Dodge, a reunion movie. James Arness coming back as Marshall Dillon. They wanted Festus. Then they told Ken what they were offering. He stayed home. No statement. No press conference. No public anger. Just silence. The same silence he had used to absorb 11 years of being the most beloved part of a machine that never once told him what he was actually worth. He let that silence speak for him. And it said everything. He died on April 28, 1991. 74 years old. Heart attack. At home in Clovis, California with his wife Tori beside him. His ashes went back to Colorado. Back to the flatlands near Lamar. Near the jailhouse where a boy first learned what it looked like when a system decided your value and called it final. He came back to that ground because Hollywood's version of the American West was never the one that belonged to him. The real one was always in Colorado. Waiting. The scariest part of Ken Curtis's story is not the 5 names. It is how ordinary his experience was inside the machine that built him. How many performers smiled through the same thing, carried the same weight, accepted the same insults dressed up as offers, and never got a reunion movie that acknowledged what they were actually worth. Ken Curtis is not an exception. He is a pattern, and that pattern is still running. Subscribe, because the next story we are telling is even closer to the surface than this one. And trust us, you are not ready for it.